Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Moonshine Classics. I'm your host, Moonshine Mike, and I'm here with a couple of stories today, something a little bit different as we try to do with each episode. This one will be a lot less tragic than the last one where we talked about El Paso. This one will also have a little bit of shall we say, comedic entertainment to it. And so, with no further ado, our subject today is the passing of the Outhouse. And we'll start with a little story that I found on the Daily American. We don't know who wrote it. It didn't give me any information on that, but it is a very interesting look at our past plumbing history. And so we begin. The spring of 2017 will mark the 46th anniversary of the passing of the outhouse on the Blue Lick Valley Farm, where my siblings and I grew to adulthood as the third generation of our Hay family to be raised on the 170-acre dairy and crop farm. This past December, during the cold evenings of the Christmas season, I entertained myself by pursuing older photo albums that record a wealth of memories associated with the growing up years on our farm, and which often feature some of the good neighbors that were part of our farming community. I was searching for a subject for this February story when the idea for writing about the passage of the outhouse commanded my attention. Back in those black and white photography days, I was on the scene in April '71 with my Kodak Brownie Bullet camera to record the passing of the little house out back that we commonly referred to as our shanty. Our privy stood at the southern edges of our farm's orchard, a two-seater with a V notched into the top middle section of the hinge door. It was a structure providing outdoor bathroom facilities that had an abundance of unwritten memories that covered the largest part of a century of time. As I sat on my easy chair in the warmth of the family home on one of the near-zero evenings that were responsible for keeping us at home, memories of yesteryear provided material that inspired the writing of this column. Until I had reached my 18th birthday, the shanty was visited daily by myself and other family members. I remember vividly the cold, penetrating days of winter when I often climbed over huge snowdrifts to make use of the shanty facilities. A Sears Roebuck catalog and often older newspapers provided the necessary toilet paper and often reading material long before the Charmin Ultra Soft 2-ply mega rolls of toilet paper were introduced on the market. When company was known to be planning a visit to the farm, the shanty underwent a thorough interior cleaning. Grandma or our mother carried a bucket of warm soapy water to the small structure and thoroughly washed down the seating area. Store-bought toilet paper was made available. To complete the chore, lime was dispensed into the hole underneath the seats, an area that was also cleaned out periodically by the honey bucket. In our family, that detestable chore fell upon our father's endless list of things to complete. Sundays, when the cousins, aunts, and uncles converged upon the farm for Grandma Hay's popular chicken and steak dinners, all ages of the family depended upon the shanty whenever they were moved by Mother Nature. Sometimes we kids hid behind or inside the shanty during our escapades of hide and seek. When a sophisticated great aunt from Greensburg came visiting to the farm, Grandma Hay made sure that the interior of the shanty smelled good and everything around the seating area was spick and span. We kids peeped around the farmhouse to watch the great aunt move slowly toward the shanty, often humming a song as she slowly built up courage and made her way into the building. During those same growing up years, I avoided inviting any of my school buddies to come home to the farm with me. I didn't want my peers to know that we didn't have modern indoor plumbing in our farmhouse. It would have been pure embarrassment to have any of my schoolmates discover that we still depended upon outhouse facilities. On a spring-like Saturday in April 1971, my 19-year-old younger brother Danny decided to dismantle both the backyard shanty and our dilapidated smokehouse. With hammer and wrecking bar in hand, Danny commenced dismantling the shanty. A quick trip into the farmhouse to obtain my Kodak Brownie Bullet camera was responsible for capturing the dismantling in black and white photos. When the shanty was pushed over, I conceived the idea to lay inside the outhouse to pretend that I was sitting there when the structure was pushed over. The idea was borrowed from one of my all-time favorite jokes that I still like to share. That joke deals with the supposed honesty of our first president, George Washington. When I crawled inside the shanty, lying on its side, I was thinking of the humorous joke that I like to share. The setting was at the isolated farm of Herman and his son Jacob. Herman was infuriated with his son for pushing their outhouse into the creek. When the father confronted Jake, the teenager quickly brought up the honesty of George Washington, who confessed to his father that he had cut down the cherry tree. The boy thought his gesture of honesty would save him from punishment. Herman ordered his son to proceed to the woodshed and receive a beating for destroying their outhouse. Jake kept telling his father that because of George Washington's honesty in telling the truth, he was saved from a whipping or another form of punishment. By that, Herman responded. When George Washington cut down the cherry tree, his old man wasn't sitting in the branches. Remembering our farm shanty and its demolition nearly 46 years ago provided an interesting subject for a cold, wintry evening when indoor plumbing was just around the corner of the room where I was sitting with an interesting photo album that holds many unique memories. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the story coming from the Daily American. And what caused me to catch my eye on that story was I remembered a poem that my dad shared with me many, many, many years ago, probably shortly after we had made a trip to relatives where they indeed still had an outhouse. Even though they had indoor plumbing, it was much easier for my uncle and my cousins to just hit the shanty as opposed to go into the house and take off their shoes and everything else they needed to do while they were in the middle of farm chores. So I'd like to share that poem with you as we conclude this episode of Moonshine Classics. So let's continue with The Passing of the Back House by Rudyard Kipling. We had our posy garden that the women loved so well. I loved it too, but better still, I loved the stronger smell that filled the evening breezes so full of homely cheer, and told the night o'ertaken tramp that human life was near. On lazy August afternoons it made a little bower delightful, where my grandsire sat and whiled away the hour. For there the summer morning its very cares entwined, and berry bushes reddened in the teeming soil behind. All day fat spiders spun their webs to catch the buzzing flies that flitted to and from the house where Ma was baking pies. And once a swarm of hornets bold had built a palace there and stung my unsuspecting aunt, I must not tell you where. Then Father took a flaming pole. That was a happy day. He nearly burned the building up, but the hornets left to stay. When summer bloom began to fade and winter to carouse, we banked that little building with a heap of hemlock boughs. But when the crust was on the snow and sullen skies were gray, in sooth the building was no place where one could wish to stay. We did our duties promptly, where one purpose swayed the mind. We tarried not, nor lingered long, on what we left behind. The torture of that icy seat would make a Spartan sob, for needs must scrape the goose flesh with a lacerating cob, that from a frost-encrusted nail was suspended by a string. My father was a frugal man, and wasted not a thing. When Grandpa had to go out back and make his morning call, we bundled up the dear old man with a muffler and a shawl. I knew the hole on which he sat, 'twas padded all around, and once I dared to sit there, 'twas all too wide, I found. My loins were all too little, and I jackknifed there to stay. They had to come and get me out, or I'd have passed away. Then father said ambition was a thing small boys should shun, and I must use the children's hole till childhood days were done. But I still marvel at the craft that cut those holes so true, the baby hole and the slender hole that fitted Sister Sue. That dear old country landmark I've tramped around a knot, and in the lap of luxury to sit has been my lot. But ere I die, I'll eat the fruit of trees I robbed of yore, then seek the shanty where my name is carved upon the door. I ween the old familiar smell will soothe my jaded soul. I'm now a man, but nonetheless, I'll try the children's hole. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for stopping by and taking a look at this latest episode of Moonshine Classics, and wish you all a good day, happy life, good health, and as always, if you feel like it, and you haven't already, please subscribe. We'll see you next time. This is Moonshine Mike for Moonshine Classics. Have a great day. So long.